Board of Water Supply, keeping Oahu refreshed for 90 years. You don't have to go to extremes to save water. For easy water-saving tips, visit boardofwatersupply.com.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're here today. Today is August 26, 2019. This is the regular meeting of the Board of Water Supply. And we're going to start off with some items requiring board action. The first on our agenda today is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held on July 22nd, 2019. They have been circulated and included in your packets. May I have a motion for approval? Okay, moved and seconded to approve the minutes of July 22nd, 2019. Is there any discussion, amendments, corrections that need to be made? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. All right, the minutes as presented are approved for the regular meeting held on July 22nd, 2019. The next two items are some of my favorite items of the entire year. We're here to honor some very special team members of ours, and I think it's really important and it's great to celebrate. I'm glad it's not a retirement. Those tend to be kind of, and I hope it's not going to be a harbinger of that. But we're going to first take up the second item on our agenda is the adoption of resolution number 902-2019. This is to honor our 2019 Board of Water Supply Employee of the Year, Rochelle Kobashigawa. May I have a motion to approve?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. All right, it is approved. And if I could get Manager Lau and Vice Chair Sproat to please help me with the presentation. All right, the presentation. I will read the resolution into the record. And so, Rochelle, would you please join us here, please? We got some, and you should check out the little plaques they made in shape of a water droplet there. And the resolution 902-2019 says, whereas Rochelle Kobashigawa, an accountant for disbursement and fiscal control supervisor with the finance division, has been a dedicated and exceptional employee since joining BWS in December 1981 and was selected the department's 2019 Employee of the Year. And whereas Ms. Kobashigawa greatly contributes to the BWS's endeavors to maintain reliable and sound financial practices by consistently completing her tasks efficiently and accurately no matter the situation. Whereas Ms. Kobashigawa is well regarded in the finance division's go-to person for her knowledge, understanding, and willingness to help staff from throughout the BWS when needed. And whereas, in addition to her normal duties, she has and continues to go beyond the call of duty to work on special tasks and have resulted in greater employee satisfaction and productivity. got more to go. Whereas Rochelle Kobashigawa has been selected as the Board of Water Supply Employee of the Year and will go on to represent BWS in the upcoming City Employee of the Year recognition ceremony. Go Rochelle! Bring him. I'm sure you'll bring pride and honor to the department, her family and friends, some of which are in the audience today. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the members of the Board of Water Supply, as we just voted on, City and County of Honolulu, that we do hereby express to Rochelle Kobashigawa our sincere appreciation for her outstanding service to the department and to the City and County of Honolulu. Be it further resolved that the members of the board express to Rochelle Kobashigawa our sincere congratulations upon her selection as the BWS Employee of the Year for 2019. And be it finally resolved that this resolution be presented to Ms. Kobashigawa with our heartfelt aloha and best wishes for success in all of her future endeavors here at the BWS. All right, we will move on to the next item here. And this is the adoption of resolution number 903, 2019. Kathleen M. Elliott Pahinui, 2019 Manager of the Year.
Motion to approve?
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. All right, the resolution passes. It is resolution number 903-2019. And Kathleen, would you please join us here? And I will again read the resolution into the record. Whereas Kathleen M. Elliott Pahinui, Public Information Officer, who oversees the Communications Office, has been selected as the Board of Water Supply Manager of the Year for 2019. And whereas Ms. Elliott Pahinui joined the BWS in July 2016 and has since successfully managed the staff and develops and implements public education programs to inspire personal stewardship of Oahu's precious water resources and provide strategic communication services to uphold its transparency and accountability to its ratepayers and 1 million users. Whereas under Kathleen Elliott Pahinui's exemplary leadership, coupled with a deep dedication to this agency's vision of Kawai Ola, Water for Life, the BWS has increased its public education and outreach, has improved its rapport with the community, other agencies, and elected officials, and now more proactively engages island water users through social media use and regularly live streaming and video producing BWS board and other related meetings. And whereas she does an outstanding job of managing and addressing diverse and high-profile BWS issues of concern with a high degree of discipline and integrity, while continuing to assure the public that information from this agency is trustworthy, accurate, and complete. And whereas, in addition to her BWS responsibilities, Ms. Elliott Pahinui serves her community as North Shore Neighborhood Board Chair, presiding over monthly public meetings that promote civic engagement to recognize and help resolve residents' concerns. And whereas Kathleen Elliott Pahinui has proven herself to be an excellent manager who personifies attributes that employees desire in their leaders as she leads by example, continually maintains a well-functioning work environment for this communications office staff, and constantly provides them with professional growth opportunities. I'm going to have to wipe this down after I speak when I talk, you know. Sorry, too much information. Whereas Ms. Elliott Pahinui's selection as the 2019 Board of Water Supply Manager of the Year and her nomination to the City Manager of the Year recognition ceremony has brought pride and honor to the BWS and all her family and friends, again, many of you here in the audience, and now therefore, be it resolved by members of the Board of Water Supply, City and County of Honolulu, that we hereby do express to Kathleen M. Elliott Pahinui our heartfelt appreciation for her outstanding service to the department and to the City and County of Honolulu. And be it further resolved that the members of this board express our sincere congratulations upon her selection as the Board of Water Supply Manager of the Year for 2019. And be it finally resolved that this resolution be presented to Kathleen M. Pahinui with our warmest aloha and best wishes for all her future endeavors.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to say that you don't get this by yourself, and I could not do this without my team. They're fantastic, and you know, this is for them as much as it is for me, and I want to just thank them very much from the bottom of my heart. I have the best team in this agency that anybody could ever have. Thank you.
Congratulations, Kathleen and Rochelle. I do want to, this is not on the agenda here, I did want to just recognize and thank all of you, including Kathleen for sure, Arthur, who participated in the annual Xeriscape project several weeks ago. It was my first time in attendance, and I am so impressed at what we were able to accomplish and what we do year in, year out. It exceeded my expectations. I am so proud to lead the agency that puts on that type of engagement with the community. I already killed one of my plants though. So. maybe I need to. Next year I'll make sure to attend some of the learning seminars. That's what I have to do.
We have many workshops throughout the year.
All right, moving on with our agenda today. First, we're moving into the items for information. We've got the presentation of the 2019 Understanding Resident Perceptions of the Board of Water Supply by Ward Research. I'm proud to call up my friend, Becky Wood.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, it is a pleasure to be here. Brian says he sees me once a year, and actually it's once every other year that we do these, but I am delighted to be here. This is a tracking survey that we started in 2015. We did it again in 2017 and now again in 2019. So our objectives are to track measures of satisfaction and other attributes that are related to perceptions of the board and your fulfillment of your mission. This is a telephone survey that we've conducted each time via phone, both cell phone and landline, so be sure to answer your cell phones when it says Ward Research. This was conducted in April among 682 Oahu residents. Maximum sampling errors plus or minus 3.6%, which is better than industry standard. And let's jump right into it. First question is with regard to overall satisfaction with the board. This is a question that we ask on a 7-point scale. We look at the top two boxes, 6 and 7 ratings, as being strong satisfaction. Moderate satisfaction is a 5 rating. Low satisfaction, 4, and then dissatisfaction is 1 through 3. So the first thing to observe is that satisfaction and strong satisfaction is quite stable. Over the 3 waves of the survey, it's been 60, 63%, so that's the top 2 boxes. If we include the moderately satisfied, then we're at 83% this year. So very positive overall. There is one thing that we note when we look at differences between bill payers and non-bill payers. And we define bill payers as those who pay a bill directly to you, not through their rent or some other indirect means. So it's interesting to see that bill payers are reporting higher levels of strong satisfaction. That's been increasing since 2015. Non-bill payers, on the other hand, there's lower levels of strong satisfaction. That has decreased from 75% down to 67%. If we include the moderate satisfaction, it's about the same. But traditionally, you don't expect people who pay a bill directly to you to be that much happier with you. But one of the differences is that you have an opportunity to communicate directly with these people. There's one other thing for me to add, and this is a question that Ernie asked before, relative to any other differences geographically. There were no consistent, statistically significant differences. However, directionally, and there was a pattern with relatively lower levels of satisfaction among Leeward and Eva Plains side. So is it related to needing to water more? We're not sure. But that is something that we'll watch over time for you. Then we looked at these individual attributes, and there's quite a number of them. The first thing to observe here is that there's very little change in most of them. Very stable perceptions of the board out in the community. The first several attributes relate to your basic mission of providing dependable, reliable water. So 85% strong satisfaction, so that's a 6 or 7 top 2 box rating. In 2019, 85% providing water to customers, providing dependable water at 81, reliable service at 79, quality and safe water, 74% strong satisfaction. Water pressure, taste of water, you can see those numbers, about 7 out of 10, strong satisfaction. Then we get into a series of attributes related to employees. The courtesy of employees, 68% strong satisfaction. Overall professionalism, overall customer service. Then, just among bill payers, so those who ostensibly see your bill, format and presentation of the bill, that's up a little bit, not enough to be statistically significant, but still 6 out of 10 of your bill payers with strong satisfaction. So in pink here in the bottom, fast response to trouble calls. This is the one place where we have seen a significant increase in satisfaction. From 50% a few years ago to 58 to now 62%. So one wonders, 62% of the people are not calling in with trouble calls. Where is this coming from? And we hypothesize that because of water main breaks, there is far more attention to your rate of response. And that's my guess, that this is coming from an awareness of you being on the scene quickly to resolve water main issues. I'm sorry? Oh.
It's both Kathleen and field operations position, working quickly.
Becky, I have a question on the numbers. So if I'm reading this right, the survey included 682 residents. So a 1% change, I'm not sure if it's been, that number has been constant over the last few surveys.
Pretty much so.
So a 1% difference is about 6 to 7 people? Thanks.
Okay, then there are more attributes. Next, still bill payers. Accuracy of billing, 6 out of 10 with strong satisfaction. Accessibility of employees, so now we have a series of attributes about employees. And they are all at about 6 out of 10 strong satisfaction. Accessibility, employees following through with what they say they'll do. The accuracy of employees, the efficiency. Then we get to some attributes related to the delivery of water. Repairing, maintaining, and replacing the water delivery system, 53% strong satisfaction. So we're starting to get just a little bit lower here now, and we're below the 50% range. Protecting, managing, and sustaining Oahu's water resources. Condition of our water delivery service system at 49%. And then we have two attributes where we're seeing a statistically significant decline. These are both related to water rates. We see a decline from 2017, both with regard to the ability to keep water rates affordable and the fairness of water rates. I should say the perceived fairness of water rates. Now this sampling was in April. So this was not people receiving their bills. These are perceptions. My guess is that they have seen or heard talk about water rate increases. They don't yet know what they mean. And so there's some waiting to see, but they know there's chatter about water rates. And then the last attribute at the bottom, things they do to reach out to residents, has been very stable at about 1 out of 3. And I know this probably feels low to you because you know what the board does and all the activities. I think it's actually pretty good because there's a lot of organizations that are vying for consumer time and attention. And the fact that this is so stable at 1/3, I think 1 out of 3 people paying attention to what you do is a really positive thing. And I know it may not feel that way to you. So let's look a little bit more at the perceptions about water rates, because that's certainly topical, and that's where we saw some declines. So at the top, the ability to keep water rates affordable. So you see the decline from 2017 to 2019 in strong satisfaction. And there's a little decline, not much, but a little in moderate satisfaction. Also down at the far end of the bar, the right end, those are the don't knows. So the don't knows have gone up, and it's conceivable that that's what has dropped the strong satisfaction by the time you divvy up the bar. And that contributes to my suggestion that people have heard something about water rates but don't yet know what it really means. We see the same phenomenon with perceived fairness of water rates, where we've seen a decline in strong satisfaction, but we've also seen an increase in don't knows. So I would treat this as a yellow flag. This is nothing to be overly concerned about, but it's certainly something to watch as people start to get their bills and there starts to be coverage if there's going to be. So then perceptions about the affordability of water service. Let's continue on that theme. Over on the left side of the page, we have asked people how much per gallon they think they pay. And we have let them, no, I think we read these categories to them. We read the categories. So if you start over on the left, 10% think it's $1 or more per gallon. 12% say 50 cents. And you can read across. Essentially, 60% of the people we interviewed think they pay more than they actually do per gallon. And that's similar to what we saw in 2017. So on the right hand of the page, the top bar is responses to a question before being told the cost of water service. So we said, how affordable would you say your water service is? So based on what they knew and their perceptions, about a third said it was very affordable. That's top 2 box rating. Another 30% said moderately affordable. Down at the bottom, this is a question after we told them that they are paying less than 1 cent per gallon. So after being told the cost of water service, the strong are very affordable, strongly affordable, 6 to 7 ratings, double. So it's clear that there is continued education needed here because there's also not much change in each of these year to year. So this is a good time to be talking to them about affordability. Then a question about message recall. What kinds of messages do consumers recall you putting out there? Over on the left, slight change year over year. About 1 out of 4 now say they recall seeing or hearing a message from you. And we ask them then, what do they recall seeing or hearing? Top messages from you, water conservation, although that was declining some at the time, back in April, but it's still the strongest mention. Then water main breaks. The water quality report was mentioned by 13% of the 24% who had seen or heard a message. And then single mentions down below, increasing rates, single-digit mentions, billing, the Nuuanu Reservoir, and Red Hill issues. So this is what they recall you saying. Then the next question is, so what do you recall from the news about the board? This has increased dramatically over the tracking, up to where it's now 46% of residents saying that they've seen or heard something. Not surprisingly, over on the right, top mention is water main breaks. And now we get a mention of impact on traffic. So it's not just water main breaks, it's how it impacts me or others. Second most frequent mention, much smaller than water main breaks, but 10% of the 46% mentioned something about Red Hill or the Navy or the fuel tanks. Then into single digits again, increasing rates, age of the system, conservation, and you can read down the list. So there clearly is more playback of stories about you. There's awareness out there. So this continues to confound the whole issue of how affordable are water rates. We ask them about their bill and can they differentiate water from sewer. The first question, and this does just go to bill payers, is your water bill combined with your sewer bill? 3/4 say yes it is. So we're off to a pretty good start here. Do you know that your water and sewer charges are from 2 different agencies? And consistently, about a third tell us yes. 2/3 do not know. 2/3 assume they come from the same agency. And one would assume the same agency that controlled both rates. And the third question, so are your water charges higher or lower than your sewer charges? So currently we've got 20% believing they're higher, about half say they are lower, and another third don't know. So what should be stamped across this in big letters is confusion. So we saw a lack of awareness of what water rates actually are, and now we see a lack of clarity about what's coming on their water bill. So let me run through just some quick additional findings. We do ask a question about the most trusted sources of information about fresh water issues. Scientists and the Board of Water Supply top this list. and it's a list of 12 or so. Data is very consistent, but you should know that you're still atop the list. We did ask about awareness of your programs and activities. That awareness is basically the same. So we see a lot of stability in the data coming out of the survey. Awareness is highest out of all of your activities for repair and maintenance of the water system. We did ask whether or not they had contacted the board regarding a bill. Very few bill payers had done that, although more than half of those who did so reported strong satisfaction with how the communication was handled. Lastly, levels of satisfaction with overall customer service provided by the board, as well as levels of satisfaction with your employees, again, is unchanged. So there's stability there as well. So our summary. There is continued strong satisfaction with the board, but we do want to note the downward trend in satisfaction among non-bill payers and what we saw as an uptick in satisfaction among bill payers. Across all of the attributes we tested, there was really very little change year over year. The two places where we saw significant differences, the first was a decline related to perceived affordability and fairness of water rates. We did see a significant increase in perceptions of your fast response to trouble calls. We see that recall of stories about the board has ticked up. Water main breaks topping the list, but there's also playback of the water rate increases in the Red Hill fuel tanks. Water service is still perceived to be more expensive than it really is, which is an opportunity. So our conclusion, so customers really have been slow to play back specific news about rate increases, but based on what we see in the attributes and the ratings, the rate increase is affecting perceptions, but not overall satisfaction with the board. Currently, it's impacting perceptions of the fairness and affordability of water rates. This is not a bigger issue for you at present. So really, very positive news. Once again, it's getting so boring, you probably won't want me back. You'll take boring, huh? Are there any questions?
I have a couple questions.
Mm-hmm.
What timing do the calls mean?
Calls, it used to be that we only called in the evenings and we interrupted all of your dinners. And now that we have moved, and I don't mean now, but over the past several years, to cell phones, we will call between 12:30 and 8:30 at night.
And if you don't get people, like, how many times do you keep trying to call back? Or if that's confidential?
No, it's not confidential. It's between 3 to 5 callbacks. You have to walk the line between them seeing ward research and their caller ID too often, but still make a good attempt to reach people who are just a little tougher. I'll follow that up by saying that we always look at the demographics of the sample. They match the Oahu adult population, and they match year over year.
And finally, what was the split between landlines and cell phones? Just curious.
Our standard, and I believe this one is the same, is 80% cell and 20% landline.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
My question would be just the distribution of the sample and what areas they were.
The area? We do keep track of that, and we do sample about proportionate to city council district. So we do look at it 9 ways. That allows us to look at the data, as I said earlier, about satisfaction with the board being somewhat lower in leeward areas and EVA. If we had larger sample size, by the time we look at areas geographic, it might have been statistically significant, but with a smaller, and 683 overall is not a small sample. But with a larger geographic sample, that might have been statistically significant.
I know the mention of people increasing dissatisfaction in the leeward and Everplain area.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be tied to, or I don't know if you can surmise from what we have here, would that be tied to the rate issue or the water main break issues, or?
I would just be guessing. Often in utility work that we've done, the higher the bill, the greater the dissatisfaction. So if the bills there are higher due to greater need, yeah. But it could also be water main breaks and traffic issues. I mean, there's a number of confounding factors, I think.
Yes, it could be generally the people on the west side, they have to, number of commute, and rain breaks do cause, depending on the location, some traffic disruptions. Although I think the older systems actually in the other parts of the island, like Honolulu area, has some of the older mains. The Everplain's grown up over the last few years, expanded, so I think the infrastructure is a little newer, except maybe down in the Eva area, Eva Beach area. So it's hard to determine. But I did ask her to see if there was any geographic trends that she could find from her data, and the Everplain, I think, was the only thing that she could see with lower levels of satisfaction there.
I think sometimes too, I think they don't make a distinction on the sewer charges, because I mean, they have to water more of their yard, and yet they get, you know, so, and the calculation of the sewer is based on how much water they use.
I think give them a break. So on the wastewater charges, which is the Department of Environmental Services, I think their assumption is that maybe only 20% goes to outside use. But in reality, in the Everplain, being a drier area and people with new landscaping to put in, they might actually be irrigating at a higher percentage of outside use. But you can see from there that across the board, it's been consistent over the last 3 surveys that people have trouble distinguishing that the bills are separate agencies and that they look at the whole thing as one. And right now with the sewer charges being typically for the residential customer larger than the water bill, it's still very challenging. We've done a more effort to try to educate our customers that it is a separate agency bill, but in the same envelope. But because it comes in a Board of Water Supply envelope, and it's combined, the perception is just, it's the water bill. Yeah.
Do we collect any fees from the environmental for doing the?
Yeah, they pay their fair share of the costs. But we provide the service, which was said a long time ago, and it was done for efficiency, although a lot of the heavier lifting is done by the staff here at the Board of Water Supply. I just want to say I appreciate Ward Research and Becky Wood's work. It's been very insightful. I think it's very clear that if people knew how much the water really costs, like less than a penny a gallon, once they know that, that really changes their perception about affordability of water. But then it gets mixed up or confused with the sewer charges and the water charges. And but I think it's an opportunity for us to do more education about the cost of water.
Maybe you need a graphic
Yeah.
on the bill or the envelope, right? Just a picture with something to summarize that.
Yeah, something to kind of remind people so they see it multiple times.
And it won't be $1 for a bottle of water anymore.
When it's less than a penny out of the tap for them. Yeah, good point.
And I think another point to remember is, so between the ratepayers and the non-ratepayers, so it seems like we got to do a little bit more work with the non-ratepayers in terms of the perception.
I think that is a challenge across the country. The people that don't get a bill, that live in projects that get one bill for the whole building, and there's maybe 300 units there. Each of the apartment owners don't get to see the bill, and it's buried in their maintenance fee or association fees. But good point about the challenges there.
Sometimes the non-bill payers are those younger and older, so both ends of the spectrum, and problems in traffic impact them differently. So they might be bringing their water main experience to this. That's hypothesis as well.
On a positive note, I mean, the response time to main breaks, that was quite an improvement, statistically a significant improvement. I just want to thank the staff here at the Board of Water Supply, our Field Operations Division, which does the heavy work of repairing the broken water mains, but also our communications office and getting the word out. And I also want to recognize the other city agencies that assist us, the Mayor's Office, Public Information Office there at the Mayor's Office, also Department of Transportation Services, and the State Department of Transportation Highways Division. We have a very good partnership, working together on main breaks and coordinating very quickly. Communications has become like the hub of the coordination and getting the information out to the media, to elected officials, to other agencies. So I just want to thank Ed Sniffen, Deputy Director for State Highways, Jade. We're texting as soon as the main break happens. I get a text from Kathleen or Mike. Could be 2 a.m. in the morning, and a few hours later, I see a text from Ed Sniffen, the Deputy Director, just saying, "Good job," if we need any help, or the Transportation Services. I just hats off to Tai Fukumitsu there. He's out there from his home, maybe at 2 a.m. in the morning, or whenever a main break's happening, he's adjusting the signal lights to make traffic flow easier. I really appreciate the collaboration. And at times when Andrew Pereira from the Mayor's Office has been out there with us, standing shoulder to shoulder with us, handling the media and some of the elected officials that may not be too happy about, especially some of the traffic disruptions. But mahalo, and HPD has done a great job at traffic control too.
All right, members, any further questions? If not, thank you very much, Becky.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, Becky.
All right, moving on to our next item here. Number 2 is the fiscal year 2019 Capital Improvement Program, or CIP review. Chair recognizes Mr. Jason Takaki.
Aloha, good afternoon, Chair Andaya and board members. This is, to start with, the quarterly CIP report for all divisions for the quarter ending June 30th, 2019, so also represents the end of the past fiscal year. So in the fourth quarter, a total of $74 million was encumbered in 57 contracts, and during the quarter, 6 contracts were completed. The detail is on the sheets that follow, which you also have full-size copies of these in the board pack. What we wanted to do today was provide you with some of the highlights of the just completed FY19 Capital Improvement Program. This chart compares FY19 to previous years. Total encumbrances for the year totaled over $95 million, representing an 87.7% execution rate. This graph shows this compared to previous years, as I said. These are some of the FY19 CIP highlights. Encumbrances for water main replacement totaled $31.5 million for approximately 7.8 miles of water main installations. This exceeded our annual target of 7 miles as we gradually increase pipeline replacement mileage per year to 21 miles of main replacement by FY 2028. Contracts for facility repair, re-roofing, and renovations totaled $12.7 million, including repairs to 2 of our larger reservoirs, the Wailaiki 180 reservoir, which is a 3.5 million gallon tank, and the Waimanalo 230, which is a $2 million gallon tank. Did I say dollars? Plus, an additional $4.2 million was committed to pump renewals and replacements and the associated replacement of piping and valves. Finally, almost $8 million was committed to phase 2 of the water meter transponder replacement project. One of our larger construction projects was for the rehabilitation of the Makapu'u pipeline tunnel, which houses a 36-inch main and essentially cuts the corner between Makapu'u Beach and the Makapu'u Point Lighthouse trailhead. Portal to portal, the tunnel measures approximately 1,070 linear feet. In planning and engineering, 17 design contracts totaling just over $14 million were awarded for main replacements at various locations. Just under $3 million was committed to 9 design contracts for future facility renovation work. This includes work at Kalihi Corporation Yard, Kalihi Pump Station, Pearl City 385 Reservoir, and for the 4th floor of this public service building. $2.3 million was encumbered for a construction management contract for work on distribution components throughout the water system. Just over $2 million was awarded for the design of a new office building and parking structure on the upper employee lot here at Beretania. The current schedule is for the draft EIS for the entire Beretania complex redevelopment to be published in November of this year and finalized early next year. Finally, a contract for $1.6 million was awarded to prepare plans and specifications for dam safety improvements at our Nuuanu Reservoir number 1. Now, during the fiscal year, 2 budget memorandums were issued which moved the funding of deferred projects to the contract adjustment account. This makes the funding available for other projects, and copies of these budget memorandums are included in the board pack. The funds made available were then used to fund contract modifications for prior year contracts and to provide additional fundings for projects where encumbrances exceeded budgeted amounts. And this is a listing of the projects that were funded by the funds made available due to the project deferrals. And that completes my bonus content on the FY19 CIP. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Are there any questions?
Questions. Regarding the water main replacement,
Yeah.
31.5 million. How many miles did you say?
So we have a schedule that started from when the master plan and infrastructure improvement program was approved, which pretty much straight lines from whenever it started, 16 or 17, up to 21 miles by 2028. So our target for 2019 was 7 miles, so we awarded 7.8 miles. This current fiscal year, FY20, the target is 8.
Okay. The other question is, so I'm looking at the bar graph, the budgeted versus encumbered over the since fiscal year 2014. Seems like this year, fiscal year 2019, it's still a decent encumbrance rate. I think you mentioned 88.7. It's a little lower than previous years. Is there is that a trend, or is that just one time?
I think looking at the budget for FY19, you can see, I don't want to blame anyone, but there was one project for $17 million that was deferred. And so that makes up, 13% of the budget right there.
I see.
Yeah, one of the projects is the meter transponder project, which would have placed, I think, about 60,000. Meter transponders are actually the radio battery unit that allows the water meter reads to communicate to the radio in the truck or the SUV car driving by, so it automatically picks up the reads. That project was originally planned to go at about the same time the water rates were going to be increased. So I made the decision to let's defer that because of our experiences in prior years when customers are facing too many changes at the same time. So if we encountered customers are experiencing new water rates, new rates increases to their bills, and we also had a problem with the 60,000 meter transponder change-out project at the same time. I think it would have been quite difficult for our customers and the agency.
I actually do remember that now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Members, any further questions?
Thank you.
Thank you for the report.
Thank you.
Moving along, item number 3, recruitment status. Chair recognizes Michelle Thomas.
Good afternoon, Board Chair and Board members. Forgive me, my voice is a little hoarse. I am getting over being sick for the last couple weeks. I'm going to be giving you the report for the period of May 2019 through July 2019, which is the end of the last fiscal year. You will see in front of you the reports that we give you every quarter, including 2 bar graphs, one regarding the July 2018 through July 2019, and then the one that's specifically for the quarter. In this particular graph, you will see at the bottom that for the period of May 2019 to July 2019, we had 15 new hires, 2 promotions, 12 separations, 21 new approvals to fill, and 26 canceled requests. What you will notice over the past fiscal year is that we have had a trend of increasing our encumbered in positions and trying to reduce our vacancies as we have moved towards ramping up our recruitment efforts to meet the CIP implementation that your board has approved over the last fiscal year. Do you have any questions?
Members, any questions? No questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the next item is item number 4, status update of groundwater levels at all index stations. Chair recognizes Mr. Barry Usagawa. Mr. Chair Devers.
As of July 2019, our potable production was 144 million gallons per day. This is slightly under the 5-month moving average for the year. As far as rainfall, 58% of normal in July. The 5-month moving average was 77%, so drying trend. As of August, the drought monitor, Hawaii Drought Monitor, shows abnormally dry conditions for all of Oahu. And most of the monitoring wells are showing decreasing trends resulting from increased pumping through the summer months. Short report this month, but available for any questions.
Members, any questions? Thank you for the report. Next item, item number 6, is the Red Hill Bulk Fuel Facility update. Chair recognizes Mr. Erwin Kawata.
Chair, water main status.
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped. Oh, number 5. Mike, you thought you was going. Sorry about that. Water main repair report for July 2019. Chair recognizes Mr. Mike Fouquet.
Good afternoon, Chair and Darren, board members. This is a change of pace because usually I'm the last guy up, but we got somebody behind me, so which is okay. The month of July, we had 24 breaks. The average time took us to fix the 4, 6, and 8 was approximately 16 hours. The 12-inch took us about 27 hours to repair. The leak detection team surveyed 24 miles. In that 24 miles, they found two leaks, and we were able to repair it before it became a major incident of a main break. Okay. Any questions?
Members, any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, finally, we have Red Hill Bulk Fuel Facility Update. Chair recognizes Mr. Erwin Kawata.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. We wanted to start off today with our report with some words we read from a Department of Hawaiian Homeland's publication. It reads, Ola ikabai, e malama ikabai, he kuliana o kako. These words speak very well to, and also remind us of our duty and responsibility to protect and preserve our drinking water resources for present and future generations. A resource that is the only one of its kind and cannot be replaced. This responsibility and the need to protect is the foundation of our position on the Red Hill fuel facility, that it needs secondary containment or be relocated to protect our drinking water aquifer. The facility has 12 million gallon tanks located on the border of the Waimalu and Moanalua aquifers, in close proximity to one of our largest water resources, our Halava Shaft. The facility routinely stores more than 180 million gallons of fuel in 75-year-old concrete tanks that are lined with 1/4-inch steel that laboratory reports show is rusting and corroding. The bottom of the tanks is just 100 feet above the aquifer, and the groundwater and rocks underneath the tanks already show fuel contaminants. Today, our technical team is going to share with you the main conclusions of recent Navy and regulatory agency reports that kind of resonate these concerns about the tanks and the risks to the groundwater aquifer. First, Dr. Brian McDonald will review the Navy's destructive testing and tank risk vulnerability reports, followed by Dr. Steve Young, who will examine the Navy's conceptual site model that discusses the subsurface geological features, and also a Department of Health paper that talks about the possible groundwater flow direction in Halava Valley. And then finally, our special counsel, Mr. David Brown, will discuss the Navy's permit application to operate the tanks and the status of that process. Brian?
Thank you, Erwin, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm Brian McDonald. I'd like to start with a very brief overview of a recently released report that we call the DT report, or destructive testing. And before I jump into that, a quick overview of what the context of this report. As you know, as Erwin just described, the tanks have a 1/4-inch liner. That liner is corroding from the outside. The corrosion is working its way inward. We cannot see that corrosion. We cannot directly measure the corrosion. And so what has to be done is a scan for that corrosion from the inside of the tank through the remaining steel. That's what we call non-destructive evaluation. It's done with scanners. Recently, the Navy has completely scanned tank 14, and then afterwards they took 10 samples, otherwise known as coupons, from that tank and sent them to an independent laboratory for this DT testing. And the primary purpose of that was to compare what they saw in the laboratory to what the NDE predicted the depth of the corrosion to be. And overall, the results are not very encouraging. What we find is that the NDE testing did not measure very well what the depth of the corrosion was. It both overestimated and underestimated the depth of the corrosion, and that's demonstrated by the fact that, let me back up a little bit, when the corrosion reaches a certain depth, that triggers a repair, and a repair is the Navy goes out and welds a patch plate over the top in case the corrosion continues and becomes a through-wall hole before the next inspection 20 years later. So 4 of those coupons that were taken to the lab found that the corrosion depth was was sufficient that it should trigger a repair patch being welded over the top of it. The NDE only found 2 of those. I also just wanted to mention that the Navy also makes some claims about the concrete shell around the steel liner and the condition of the concrete and the concrete reinforcing, but there was very little work done in terms of evaluating the concrete, and almost no work done by the independent lab to look at the condition of the concrete. So I think the conclusions made by the Navy based on DT of the concrete were well outside the scope of that testing. Okay. I want to use coupon number 3 as an example. It provides a good example of the unreliability of the NDE evaluation of the corrosion depth. So this was at a location in the tank where the Navy's NDE said that there was no corrosion. The image on the left is the back of the back surface of the liner, and you can see that there is apparent corrosion there. The image on the right is, I'll have to explain this a little bit, but this is a cross-section through the steel liner. So this gray material you see here, that's the remaining steel. It's a cross-section such that the outside of the tank is on the top side, the inside of the tank is on the bottom side. You can see that because that thin green line there is the paint on the tank. So this is an example of a cross-section taken from this coupon. The original thickness of the liner was about here, so there's general thinning across this entire cross-section. And then this valley that you see here is a pit, and this pit is growing from the outside inward. When the pit reaches a certain depth, that's when the Navy welds a patch plate over the top. That depth is right about here. It's at 160.16 inches of remaining steel. There's about 0.13 left here. So this is an area that should have received a patch plate, but it was missed by the NDE, and I just wanted to show that as an example. Moving on to another report that was recently released by the Navy. This is what we call the risk report, quantitative risk report. So the Navy hired an outside consulting firm called ABS Consulting to do quantitative risk of leaks from the tanks. And the term quantitative is important here. It means that these are based on calculations. So ABS has looked at the history of leaks at Red Hill. They've looked at the history of leaks at other facilities. They've looked at the Navy's ability to detect and respond to leaks, and they've actually gone through and calculated what they think the probabilities are of leaks in the future. So these sub-bullet items that you see up there, those are actually ABS calculations of probabilities of leaks that we've extracted from the report. They look at 2 types of leaks. They look at acute or sudden leaks as well as chronic leaks. I'll just point you to the very top bullet item. In any given year, there's about a 27% chance that you're going to have an acute leak up to 30,000 gallons. And then the bottom bullet is the chronic leaks. So this is leaks that just continue and they're not detected. They expect that there could be 5,800 gallons per year in just these slow chronic leaks. And we consider these, we consider these risks to be too high. In addition to this risk report that came from the Navy's independent consultant, the Navy wrote their own summary risk report, which is essentially an interpretation of the ABS report. And in it, the Navy essentially disagrees with the calculations and claims that they're not accurate, that the leak rates don't align with historical records, and that the calculations would need improvement. We disagree with the first bullet. We think that the leak rates that are in the ABS report are consistent with historic leaks at the site. And it's important to keep one thing in mind: the probabilities and the leak sizes that you saw on the previous slide, those are based on phase 1 of a 4-phase quantitative risk assessment. So those don't include additional threats like seismic and fire and that sort of thing. So those rates can only come up when phases 2, 3, and 4 are done. But what the Navy has said that they don't think it's worth going back and trying to correct now the quantitative calculations done by their own consultant, but instead they would like to switch, they would like to modify the AOC such that we now do qualitative risk assessments. Rather than calculate the probabilities, they would prefer to assemble teams of experts and base this on expert opinion and judgment rather than the rigorous calculations that were in the ABS report. So that's what I have for the DT and the risk reports that have recently come out. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Young now, who's going to discuss groundwater modeling.
Before we move on, are there any questions from the board members on the destructive testing and also the risk reports?
I have a couple questions. So, thanks very much, Mr. McDonald, super helpful. I'm not an engineer or anything like that, so I'm just trying to make sure I understand this correctly. But with respect to the DT report, did you say that the tanks are only being inspected once every 20 years or so?
Yes. So I'll explain this very quickly, but consider a remaining steel thickness in pits growing from the outside.
Right.
They want to prevent a pit from growing through wall in 20 years, and so they have a presumed pit growth rate, and they back that out to 20 years and say we have to have this much remaining thickness or we need a patch plate. Right,
okay. So given the inaccuracies in the report, what's the next step?
Well, I think you might be asking the wrong person, but I'll give you a technical explanation.
Right, I'm just concerned given what you just shared.
Well, Dr. McDonald, if I could take a stab at that.
By all means.
Because this goes back to what the Department of Health and EPA has approved to be required under the administrative order and consent to AOC.
Right.
We pointed out that, and keep in mind, tank 14 is the only tank that they did destructive testing. They took 10 square feet of samples or 10 coupons or cutouts out of that tank, which has probably a square feet of tank surface in contact with fuel, maybe about 80,000 square feet. Yeah. So they looked at 10 locations, each of square foot at a size. Right. And there are 15 and ultimately 20 tanks there. Right. We pointed out early on in the discussions with the parties to the AOC that this was not statistically significant or adequate to make any kind of reasonable assumptions of confidence that the non-destructive examination evaluation process is with only 10 square feet out of 80,000 square feet for one tank, and multiply that 80,000 square feet by 15 tanks worth of fuel, that the sample size was too small. They did not agree with our request to expand the sample size.
And if I could add to that, no, that's exactly right. And to put this in context, the Navy's testing, inspection, repair, maintenance processes rely on them being able to locate areas of deep pitting and to put a patch plate on before, the stitch in time saves 9, to put the patch plate on and prevent the through wall. And so if they can't reliably and accurately find all of the areas of deep pitting, that calls the entire TIRM into question. In terms of, and I can answer your question from a technical standpoint. What would I do with this information?
Right.
From a technical standpoint, you would take this information and infuse it into the second report, which is the risk analysis. And you say, okay, how does the risks change if we're only going to be able to find half of the areas where the corrosion pit is deep enough? And it looks like there's a second hurdle that there may not be any more quantitative risk being done here. So you wouldn't be able to do that.
Well, that would be my follow-up question, right? I mean, given this, setting aside the sample size, looking at 10 square feet out of 80,000 and
In one tank.
out of 15 or so tanks.
So 15 times 80,000 square feet of
Right.
surface area.
Right, and the fact that they're not wanting to continue with the quantitative risk assessment. I mean, I have significant concerns about the threats to the groundwater resources, given our fiduciary responsibilities. So, anyhow, yes, thank you. This
Thank you.
for the disconcerting info.
Thank you.
Good day. Steve Young, and I will be talking about the conceptual site model report. The purpose of this report is to document the collection analysis of field data, and it's also to provide the guidelines for developing a computer model for simulating groundwater flow and transport. The model we're talking about was issued in July 2019. It represents a series of reports. The latest version was issued in 2018. When that was issued, the EPA, DOH, and the Board of Water Supply provided written comments indicating there were significant concerns about the discrepancy between what we saw in the field data and what they were saying in the conceptual report. And when this report was issued in 2019, we all realized that those majority of those concerns were not addressed. And right here, I'm going to list 3 of these concerns. The first issue we have listed regards to the flow, groundwater flow. And the key issue is that the report is not acknowledging that the majority and the primary direction shallow groundwater flow in the basalt is towards the northwest, which is in the direction of Halava Shaft, and it is not, as the model says, in the southeast towards Red Hill. So the major difference there. The second issue has to do with geology. The report is insisting and claiming that there is a barrier to groundwater flow between where the tanks are and where Halava Shaft is. And this barrier is represented by valley fill and weathered basalt that is deep enough to prevent water from flowing in that direction. And we believe that we know that material is there, but we believe it is not that deep enough to act as a barrier. And same with the other agencies believe the same. The third item has to do with groundwater flow and transport. Is the report states that no fuel from any spill since 2008 has reached the water table, and we believe, as others do, DOH and EPA, that there's strong indication that there is fuel that has reached the water table since that point. Then the next item we'll talk about is a recent report by Department of Health evaluation of groundwater flow. It really overlaps with the points that I made earlier, and this is they're finding findings that again would support what we said earlier. The first point is that, as you said it earlier, the field data is supporting that the primary flow in the shallow groundwater system in the basalt is towards the northwest, towards Halava Shaft. And I'll show a map that they show in their report on the next slide. The second issue has to do with the model. It's saying the model really is unable and neither reproduce, it doesn't reproduce either the direction or magnitude of the change in the measured water levels in the wells. So there's a gap between what the physical reality and what the model is predicting. And the third point is, again, back to the geology, there really is insufficient data to make the claim that this valley fill and weathered basalt is acting as a basalt. It's just not enough to say it's deep enough, and there's a lot of uncertainty in that. And all 3 of these claims have been consistent with what the Board of Water Supply has been saying over the last several years. And the last figure that slide I will cover is that this is a map that came from the Department of Health report that was issued in July 2018. And what we're seeing here are the red dots represent wells where water levels have been measured. And the blue line is outlining where the tanks are What we see in those lines represent contours of water pressure or water level. The higher number would be the higher the water level, and it's going to flow from the high values to the low values. Those are head levels? Yes, those are water level head levels. And this is the primary flow, which is what they're saying. This is the primary direction. This is going from the high values to the low values. This is a lava shaft over in this direction. And that's really what they're saying in their report. And the model is saying the flow is primary in this direction. You know, get down towards the end of this bottleneck, you can see some of it. Here's Red Hill Shaft right in here. But the flow, which they're trying to emphasize, is in this direction, and they provide, you know, other information to support their points. So, you know, those are the three issues we wanted to address. And if there's no questions, I'll turn it over to David Brown to talk about the operation permit for the tanks.
Any questions on the groundwater? So Department of Health, in their July 2019 report, which they released to us, actually agrees with our concerns.
So given the DOH itself has kind of acknowledged some of the shortcomings in the Navy's modeling, are there going to be any changes either to the AOC or peer reviews for the model or anything else that would help to better ground truth it and ensure that it's more accurate?
I'm not aware, but or maybe Ernie can take a stab at that.
We have been in contact with Department of Health and EPA. So far, there's no indications of any kind of changes being made. The last groundwater monitoring meeting that took place simply indicated the continuance of the same approach as was done earlier, that the flows really don't go across the valley and the flows continue to go down the valley. So we continue to press Department of Health.
Okay, so the Department of Health acknowledged the shortcomings but isn't requiring the Navy to do anything to address the problem?
It's, we understand there's lots of discussions. We're not privileged to the discussions, but we continue to communicate with Department of Health and EPA about essentially that the model, as we've always said, has to be able to reproduce what you're observing in the field in real life. And those are the observed levels that we're seeing in real life.
It's important to note that this report actually came out of the Safe Drinking Water branch of the State Department of Health, and it's very consistent. Dr. Young, is it consistent with our findings?
It is very consistent with our analysis of the data and the comments that we've submitted on it. Any other questions on this section?
Questions?
Not right now. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next one, Mr. David Brown.
Good afternoon, Board Chair, Board members. So we're going to transition now from a discussion of the technical documents, reports, and deliverables that have come out recently to regulatory developments on Red Hill, most notably an update on the status of the Navy's permit application to operate the Red Hill underground storage tanks. So by way of background, the need for a permit at Red Hill came about because the Department of Health revised its underground storage tank rules in response to a lawsuit filed by the Sierra Club, at the conclusion of which Judge Crabtree ordered that the former exemption for field-constructed tanks like those at Red Hill was invalid and requiring the Department of Health to revise its underground storage tank rules. The new current rules require all underground storage tanks, including field-constructed tanks like those at Red Hill, to obtain an operating permit. And the permit deadline was 1 year from when the rules became effective. And those rules became effective July 15th of last year. So as of July this year, there was a requirement in place for all underground storage tanks to have a permit. The Navy submitted an initial permit application on March 14th of this year, but it was deemed incomplete by the Department of Health, so the Navy resubmitted its permit with corrections on May 23rd, and DOH, the Department of Health, published and solicited public comments on a draft Red Hill underground storage tank permit on March 28th of this year, 2019. So on June 24th, the Board of Water Supply submitted its comments informing the Department of Health that it did not believe it was appropriate at this time to issue an operating permit for the Red Hill underground storage tanks, and that those tanks should either be upgraded with secondary containment or relocated away from the aquifer. And the basis for those comments were that the Red Hill underground storage tanks do not satisfy the requirements of Hawaii Revised Statute 342L, which requires all underground storage tanks to be operated to prevent releases for their operational life. And the basis for that was, again, the undisputed facts that these tanks have been leaking, as demonstrated by the years of repairs, the non-destructive testing that was spoken about by Dr. McDonald, the groundwater impacts that was addressed today by Dr. Young, and then the condition of the steel liner samples we also talked about, and of course the Tank 5 fuel release in 2014. In addition, there are also concerns from the board that the Red Hill tanks do not meet the corrosion protection requirements that are specified in the new Department of Health underground storage tank rules. So in addition to the comments that were submitted by the board, the Sierra Club of Hawaii also submitted comments that included a request for a contested case hearing on the Navy's permit application. Contested case hearing would require an administrative hearing before the Department of Health, during which the Sierra Club would oppose approval of the Red Hill permit. The Sierra Club is seeking to have the Department of Health deny the permit and order the Navy to relocate the tanks based on Hawaii Constitution's requirement or right to a clean and healthful environment for all people. To our knowledge, the Department of Health has not yet responded to the Sierra Club's request for a contested case hearing, and since the Department of Health closed the public comment period on the Red Hill permit application, it is our understanding that no permit for the Red Hill tanks has yet been issued, which would mean that the Navy is currently operating without a permit. So any person or entity who believes it may be affected by a decision at issue in a contested case hearing can seek to become a party in that contested case hearing. The regulatory basis for that right is set forth in the Department of Health's administrative rules. We've included the notable and applicable administrative rule provision here, section 11.135, which provides the right to become a party by filing a motion of leave to intervene. That motion must state the grounds upon which the person or agency claims to have an interest and needs to be filed with at least 10 days before the contested case hearing. That would conclude my update on the permit application. Happy to take any questions.
I have a question.
Sure.
Are there any penalty provisions within the administrative rules or any other sections with respect to operating without a permit, since the Navy doesn't have them?
So there are provisions for enforcement by the Department of Health to anyone that's in violation of the administrative rules. The applicable rules state that you need to get a permit by July 15th or else you're not supposed to be in operation. I don't have the exact penalty provisions or figures in front of me right now. That would be subject to the discretion of the Department of Health's enforcement authority.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. So life is in fresh water. We must care for this water. That is our responsibility. That concludes our update. Happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Members, any questions?
I think I might have additional questions, but I think those are for our attorney, so I will wait for executive session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, board. Periodically we wanted to give you an update on some important developments on the Red Hill fuel tank situation. We felt that these were very important updates for you. This is all based on actual reports that are public information that's been released to us or been posted on the US EPA's website, in particular the Navy reports. Department of Health did send us their report, so we consider it public information. Work done by their experts and working with the University of Hawaii.
I guess the only other thing I'd add is I really like to thank Erwin and the rest of the team for your excellent work on this and continuing to wade through all of the technical reports and provide helpful summaries for us, because I know, at least for me, who's not trained as an engineer, different things, it's really helpful to have the information to make decisions. So thank you.
They work very hard.
Yes.
Good job. Okay.
All right, I think that brings us to the end of our agenda for the regular meeting or regular session. May I have a motion to enter into executive session?
So moved. Second.
Okay, any discussion? Not all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. All right, thank you much. Thank you everybody for attending.
Our mission at the Honolulu Board of Water Supply is to provide Oahu with safe, dependable, and affordable water now and into the future. A big part of what we do is educating the community about the importance of saving water through our annual Water Conservation Week poster and poetry contests. Each year, the students are great at answering the call. Our judges are always impressed with the thousands of vivid pieces of artwork as well as poems that demonstrate why saving water is important and why our water resources are precious to them. Education is a cornerstone of our outreach program, whether it's checking for leaks or water conservation in general. BWS takes time to be a part of the community and talking to people one-on-one. Preserving our water resource is everyone's kuleana. We offer outreach programs for the keiki all the way up to the kupuna. Our employees work together to come up with creative activities that demonstrate what the BWS does each and every day to pump millions of gallons of water and deliver it to where it is needed. These hands-on activities highlight how preserving our water resource is everyone's kuleana. Begin your journey to water conservation by joining the Board of Water Supply. BWS has career opportunities in customer care, information technology, field operations, and for civil, electrical, and mechanical engineers. To find current job openings, go to bwsjobs.com.
For water-saving tips, visit boardofwatersupply.com.
Every drop of water is part of a journey. It begins as water vapor that falls to earth as rain. For the next 25 years, it's filtered through volcanic rock. At last, it arrives at its final destination.
Really? Can somebody come fix this?
When it comes to water, don't waste a drop.